Well, an Austin congressman is among a bipartisan group of lawmakers pushing for the release of the Epstein files. This week, Congressman Greg Casar and other members of the House Oversight Committee met with women who say they were victimized by billionaire sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. They want Congress and President Donald Trump to release the files. Now, while the president is calling the push to release them a, quote, Democrat hoax, I spoke with Representative Casar today about what those women want. So when you think about everything that you heard and what you know of so far, why do you think more charges have not been filed against some of the people? I mean, theoretically, the DOJ has this information, right?
One really striking moment during our meeting with, as I said, about a dozen of Jeffrey Epstein's victims was that there were members of Congress that asked those victims to give us more names of the people who got off the hook. Because many of these women said that there were folks that have evaded essentially prosecution or accountability. And in response to the congressperson's question, these survivors said, I hate to tell you this, but we already gave you all this information. The federal government already has these names. They've already taken our testimony. And to me, that's one of the most important parts of this story is why have some of these folks that participating in Jeffrey Epstein's crime not been held accountable? And then just as importantly, why does the federal government have all of this information and hasn't moved forward on some of these cases? And I think the only way to answer those questions is for full transparency. We only need about 2 or 3 more Republicans to sign on to the Release the Jeffrey Epstein Files bill, and we can get all of those files.
Let me ask you this. In addition to the movement to release the files, is there legislation that you want to see passed that you think could prevent something like this from happening in the future?
We absolutely need stronger enforcement of some of our rules and regulations that block bank transactions or get involved when banks are moving large amounts of money overseas and all over the country for these kinds of sex trafficking operations. And I think we can learn where our laws have been insufficient when we get transparency from these files. Listening to the survivors of Jeffrey Epstein's crimes reminded me of hearing many of the survivors of the rape kit backlog scandal here in Austin, Texas from about a decade ago, when there is just too little oversight and accountability of those agencies that are supposed to help survivors. A lot of times their cases get pushed under the rug. That happened here in Austin, Texas. I believe it's happening here with the Epstein case. I believe it's also a cover-up. And that's why it's so important to have legislators that are willing to ask tough questions, even of our law enforcement partners, to make sure that no women's cases get pushed under the rug, be it in Austin, Texas, or in Washington, D.C.